Welcome to the Waiting Warriors podcast. I'm Michelle Bowler. I'm an Army wife of over 8 years, a mom of 4 little girls, and a huge believer that being a supportive military or first responder loved one is way easier when you connect with a community. In addition to sharing some of my own insights and journey, I have set out to interview waiting warriors around the world so we can all learn together from their triumphs and their struggles. Together, we can do so much more than just survive. We can thrive. And that is what being a waiting warrior is all about. Hey, Waiting Warriors, welcome to another week on the Waiting Warriors podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Bowler, and this week we are welcoming back a guest. Welcome back to the show, Jolynn Lee.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because if you remember Jolie's intro last time, she's a mom, a stay-at-home mom of 5. The last 2 are teenagers. So she has grown military kids. But what's interesting is 3 of her olders,
That's what we say.
I know, that's what we say too. Like, oh, there's the older girls and then there's the baby.
The youngers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 3 of her older kids are still affiliated with the military. So I was really excited when she said she'd be willing to talk to us this month during the month of the military child because I know I've mentioned before on various episodes that like there is this real fear in me and other military spouses that I know that this life and not just being in the military, but like what being a military child means. The PCSs, the saying goodbye to friends, the saying goodbye to their one parent all the time, or 2 parents if you're dual.
Right.
Like so many, it's almost like they're constantly in a transition.
I was thinking that they live a life that's constantly in flux and it's very unpredictable.
Yeah, but you have 5 kids and 3 who have clearly not been ruined by it and not been ruined by it to the extent of they feel comfortable continuing that life, which I think, um, means we can learn a lot. Obviously, something happened right.
So what it means is that you're not ruining your kids' lives.
Well, okay, so we're just gonna jump. Well, okay, real fast.
Go ahead.
If you didn't hear Jolynn's episode, let's give her a proper intro. So she has the 5 kids. She's a caretaker of her grandma. Husband has been 30 years retired Marine working as a military contractor now. So that's Jolynn, small part of Jolynn. But kind of back to what you were saying though, like military life isn't going to ruin your kids. Cuz my husband says the same thing, right? Like he's like, "No, like it's just not. You see so many things." But then not in a judgmental way, but just in an observational way, I do see military life negatively impacting some kids' life.
Sure.
We are in a neighborhood where I can see how a close friend, their kids are struggling and they don't, as a family, don't have coping skills and I don't even know everything that they do or do not do, obviously, because I'm not all knowing and all seeing, but I have guesses, but those are just guesses. So how can we kind of balance that and be proactive so that way, again, I don't want to I don't want to make anybody feel bad because I know
It's very easy. It's very easy when you feel like you're struggling and when you feel like your family is struggling to mentally isolate and think that you are the only one
yeah,
or that you're doing it wrong. I mean, let's be real. We're all our own worst critic. I think especially when it comes to relational issues, we can be our own worst critic. So I think one thing that's helpful to keep in mind is all families struggle at some point in time.
Yeah.
multiple times throughout their, family journey. So it's not uncommon, and it is not necessarily a derivative of being a military family,
Okay.
because all families have transition. I mean, my dad wasn't in the military, he was in college athletics, and I moved every 2 years my entire life until I married the Marine Corps, right? So if you had looked at my transcript, you'd have been like, oh, that's a military kid. And I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I thought all that transition prepared me for military life, and it was just completely different. It was just a completely different transition. So I think that's really important to remember is, you're not alone.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean you're failing just because you're having a rocky moment. It just means you're having a moment and you keep moving forward.
Yeah.
That's
And
all families need to.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good reminder that every family situation has its pros and cons
Mhm,
because Austin and I have talked to each other. Wow, that was really hard to say. Austin and I have talked to each other about how, every job is going to come with pros and cons. It just depends on
mhm.
what cons we want to figure out, because
Right.
the pros we just get to enjoy, but the cons are what you have to figure out and really pull your family through.
Right. All dynamics have their stressors and their negatives.
Yeah,
My husband grew up in the same town his entire life, which before joining the Marine Corps.
that was me. Yeah.
Um, and I thought I was envious of that. I was like, oh man, I wish I would have had that experience, right?
Mhm.
But in some ways, that's tough because me moving, I got to reinvent myself every 2 years. If I didn't like the peer group that I was with, or I didn't like my school environment, well, that's okay. It was only going to last for a season because eventually we were going to move again anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I got to then look forward to those new experiences, even though it was hard. I'm not minimizing the transition or the heartache that came with it. Um, but it was still an opportunity to explore new things, new people, um, new environments. And if there was something negative going on in that environment that I was leaving, I was able to genuinely step away and leave it behind. That's
Mm.
something that I've always told my kids.
Yeah.
I know it's hard, especially when they were in high school. It was very hard to move in high school, not minimizing that in any way, shape, or form. Yet at
Mhm.
the same time, um, they have this like Rolodex of people that they have stayed in touch with throughout the years that are all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. It's really, I feel like it is really how you as the adult present things and how you carry yourself. And that doesn't mean that you put on a facade and you pretend and you go, oh, everything's wonderful. It's all perfect. I never cry. I'm always happy to move. Yeehaw, we're doing it again.
Yeah.
I think you can be honest with your kids, both with your own frustrations and heartaches, but also you exemplify that resilience and you exemplify the attitude that you want them to adopt, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. So how did you do that for your kids?
They should be on here, not me. That's what you should do.
Like,
Like, here's Jolynn. Now here's the real story.
yeah.
How did I do that with my kids?
Mhm.
I think sometimes I did a really good job and other times I didn't. I had those moments where I would go into my closet, which was at one point, we had a house where the closet was in the master bedroom, in the master bathroom. So I would go into the bedroom, lock the door, go into the bathroom, lock the door, then go into the closet and cry, right? Because of whatever. But I was like, there's three doors between us, so it's all good. I can cry.
Yeah.
Um, I tried to be really transparent with my kids.
Mhm.
That just worked for our family
Mhm.
dynamic. Every family dynamic is different, but I tried to be really transparent and just really communicate with them a lot. I might have been an over communicator to some degree. We had
What
what we
makes you
called,
say that? What makes you think that you were an over communicator? Just curious.
oh, because sometimes they're just like, oh my gosh, here, mom wants to talk again. Especially my son, he's like, she's gonna ask me about my feelings.
Mhm.
But we had what we called the talking table, and it was our dining room table. And I'd be like, "Hey guys, let's gather in." And they're like, "Oh, time for a family talk." And we still do that.
Yeah.
Like, we do that with the 2 that are still in the house, and ironically enough, when we get together as a family, like, we will still end up gathering around the table, and it's like the talking table, and what's really funny is, in the last 2 years, 2 years ago, when we moved into the house that we're in now, we decided to get rid of that table that my husband and I had always had since we got married because, I mean, let's be real, 30 years in the Marine Corps, it was beat to death,
Yeah.
just hammered, right? And the kids were super tragic about it. They were like,
Oh.
"You're gonna get rid of the talking table? Like, my handwriting's, pushed into that table, and this is where I spilt the fingernail polish," and, like, all their memories that were associated with it, they were kind of upset, and I was like, "Guys, it's not a pretty table anymore." But that it kind of just was a symbol of all the discussions that we had had through the years, good and bad, positive and discussing how to navigate those negative moments as well. And I had to learn their languages. I had to learn their language of communication, whether it was written or nowadays texting. Like, I have a child who is all about the bullet points. Don't give me the narrative format, just give me the bullet points and let's just get to it. I have one who, um, I have to take her to lunch, I have to take her out to a meal, and when I do that, she'll spill her guts and talk her head off.
Mhm.
But you got to find what works within your family and what works for each kid because they're so different.
Yeah.
And that takes being very intentional.
Mhm.
And I think that's the hardest thing to do as parents, especially busy military parents,
Mhm.
to slow down and learn to listen and to speak your kids' language
Yeah.
so that you're not just talking, but you're really communicating.
Yeah. Because it takes it's like some painful growth sometimes to do
Hmm.
that because,
Oh, yeah.
like, we've had my I mean, our kids are way young, but one of our first separations with kids that were, somewhat old enough to react, our oldest was, oh, I forget. I think she was either like 3.5 or 4.5
Hmm.
that summer. And it was really hard because the first few weeks of him being gone, he was on, I don't know if it was like a TDY, or he was gone for like the whole summer. Whatever the order said, I don't remember. But
It
um
blurs together after a while.
well, and that was like a one of the dark ages for me. So
Sure.
we've blurred a few things out. But she it was really, really hard for me, especially to watch that my husband would FaceTime or call our family. And so at the time we had 3 little girls, and she's the oldest. She had to have been 4.5. So I had a 4.5, and then like a 2, she would have been 3, and then a 1-year old. And I'm like, it's dad. Like, we should be so excited that he is there. And she would just get so mad and refuse to talk to him. So my heart broke. I know it hurt his feelings a little bit. He was like more understanding because he had chaplainy training that, you don't pressure the kid into anything
Right. And
touchy.
don't take it personal.
Yeah, yeah. So he knew that, but like I was watching this, and but also having like I had to experience it differently than he did because I'm now in the house with a super angry 4.5 year
Right.
old, which can be very not fun sometimes.
Sure.
So it took a few weeks for us to think, okay, maybe she needs like a different form of communication, like what you were saying. And it took a few different trying different things, which
Mhm.
takes work and takes a lot of thought, and but also like a lot of emotional, mental energy on
That
both
we feel like we don't always have, but we've gotta
yeah,
dig deep and find.
yeah, it's like scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yep.
And then finally, I think it was like the third or fourth thing that we tried, we realized like she just wants, even 4.5 years old, which like was so funny to watch. She just wanted to have the phone up against her face. She didn't want
Oh,
to FaceTime, but she just wanted to be able to walk around the house and have daddy all to herself. But which we had tried with FaceTime, but that didn't work. Like it was very specific for her. And it just has been, it's just so interesting because that's still her thing. She
right.
doesn't she doesn't want, I mean, she won't run away anymore when it's
But that's her
yeah,
preferred mode of communication.
yeah, yeah, and
I mean,
that's
we all have that sweet spot that where it really works with us and it
yeah,
really gels, you know? And when we communicate like that, we're like, "Yes." You
yeah,
know, we feel loved, we feel secure, we feel validated, we feel all the good stuff and there's no
mhm,
frustration. And
yeah,
it's finding that, and that can be the hard thing.
yeah, which
And it changes.
yeah, which is, like, the hard part because especially I think with young kids, I think it's important to remember that, like, you're, 1, not alone in this, we are all scraping the barrel. It's not like
Mhm.
these are magically coming to us. Um,
So it's all a work in progress. It's all a learning journey, you
yeah.
know?
Which is so hard though, like, why can't can't it just be, like, a little bit easier? Just
Right. And can't they all just do it the same way so
I
I
know.
don't have to keep figuring it out? And why does it have to change as they get older and they go through different phases?
Yeah,
Because it's life and
yeah,
we change.
yeah. When you say it like that, then it makes
Makes sense?
sense. But that
But in the heat of the moment, we don't slow down and think like that. We're
yeah,
just very emotional and we think things that are very finite, you know?
mm,
We're never going to be okay.
yeah,
I'm ruining my kid's life forever. You know, all these really powerful words that if we removed them from our language and we removed them from our thought processes, it would change the picture. It would change our perspective. No, it's
gotta
not going to be like this forever. No, you know, I'm not screwing my kid up forever.
yeah, it's just a phase.
It's just a moment. Yeah, I would always say to my kids, okay, so this is a speed bump. This is a speed bump. It's
Yeah,
going to be all right.
yeah, that's a good way that's a good way to think of it because I think of my experience with speed bumps, and there have been some times where I didn't see them coming.
Right? And they rock your world.
Wow! And growing
Yeah.
up, I'm one of 8 kids, so I learned to drive a 15-passenger van, like, those, like,
Right.
big
A
ones
bus.
that, like yeah, like a big giant bus, and I can, like, still feel in my body the first time I didn't see a speed bump, and we literally flew because it was a big car, so it's not like we, like, "Oh, we scraped the speed
Da-dum, da-dum.
bump." Yeah,
Right.
no, we took off.
You caught air.
Yeah. I wish there was like a video to see what actually happened because it maybe wasn't as dramatic, but it felt very dramatic, which I guess is another good
So
reminder.
so my youngest son is into dirt bike racing, right?
Uh-huh.
And so on the dirt bike track, they have this one section called the whoop-de-doos. And
Yeah.
it's like this, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? So if you catch them the right way at the right speed, you like hit it and you'll sail over a couple and then you'll land right and then you'll catch air and you'll land right. But if you don't hit it right at the right speed, you're like ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom,
Mhm.
right? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we hit our whoop-de-doos and we hit them right and we just launch and it's clear sailing. And other times we're like, my timing's off, my speed
Yeah.
was off, and I'm just gonna have to ride my way through this.
I love that they're called whoop-de-doos.
I know, right? Because you're like, oh, here we go.
Isn't it like that makes the perfect metaphor for life because like
Right?
whoop-de-doo, okay. Like
Everybody hang on.
that was a ride.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna Well, okay, but here's the thing, because I was gonna say, like, we're just gonna pray that we hit it right. But did you find
But
that
there's a
those
lot to be
lessons
learned
that
in
yeah,
yeah. So
what
that's
were those things
that's
for you?
so that's another thing that, I feel like we have learned over time, and it's so funny because my kids will tell you how Jeff and I parent the younger 2 now is
Mhm.
so different than how we parented those older 3,
Yeah.
and so I always tell them, "I want you to parent like you see us parenting now because you guys were our trial run, just saying." Um, so I kind of encourage that because I just think that, well, I mean, we're older, we're more mature, and the things that rocked our world then don't rock our world now. We recognize that we don't have to win every battle, and some things really are just small.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that we have told the kids is you learn from the highs and the lows. You know, there are lessons to be pulled from the wins and the losses, and you just have to be open to them and to look for them. And there's growth in that.
Um, One question I had when you were talking is what what are things like specific lessons that you learned? You know what I mean? Because like you said, like you parent differently now than you did before.
Oh,
What are kind of
specific.
some of the specific things? And I know for every family it's gonna be different, but I like to hear everybody's different because then I can, we can all pick and choose what feels and we can try things and then try other things and, more options
Right.
better.
No, I'm tracking. Um, so some things that have been consistent in our family dynamics across the board are we have always said within our family, you have to choose. You choose your attitude, you choose to love, you choose to engage, or you choose not to.
Mhm.
And so that was something that we stressed from the ground up. Choose your words. Choose to speak words that build people up, not tear people down,
Mhm.
particularly in our own family, because a lot of times we'll give our best to everybody else, and then we'll give the leftovers to the people in our house,
Yeah.
and that's kind of backwards,
Yeah.
you know. But we just assume that the people within our four walls are going to offer more grace, and
Yeah.
they typically do. But that doesn't mean that they deserve our leftovers. You
Or they
know,
should. Yeah.
yeah, they deserve the grace and the consideration and the kindness that we would give to outsiders because um, we're teaching each other within our family dynamic.
Yeah.
And so that's really a valuable thing. Making memories, you know, that's all. And I learned that from my dad and my grandma and my stepmom, always to make memories, make memories, make memories. And when I say make memories, it doesn't have to be like the big trip or, you know, just the holiday. The little everyday moments can be memory making.
Yeah.
Um, my oldest daughter, the entire month of February, her kids love February because all through February, she puts hearts, 1 heart a day on their door with a little, like, pick me up, encouraging message. That's just
Yeah.
what they do in February, but that's something that, like, she learned through the years. So that's a memory that they have that they're probably gonna hold on to and pass on. For us, you find your own family traditions. For us, it was the talking table. And to this day, as I told you, my adult kids gather around the table, and that's something that they do with their kids
Yeah.
now. They like sit around and have these family talks.
Yeah.
So you have to find what works for your family and what gels and then be very intentional about it. You know,
Mhm.
we can be so intentional about our exercise. We can be intentional about our job performance. We can be intentional about, you know, our communication with our peers and our coworkers and our volunteer community. Are we intentional about our communication with our kids? And
Yeah.
do we are we intentional to listen to them with the same consideration and attention and respect that we give outside people? Because they want to be heard too.
Yeah.
I've I have really kind of clued into that. My grandma is 94. She has Alzheimer's. Um, so one of her nurses calls it soul speak.
Mm.
My grandma's words aren't clear. You know, She'll say, "I need more Christmas. I need more Christmas." She means ice. She wants more ice in her drink. But she doesn't have the word for ice anymore, but she remembers at Christmas that it's cold because she's from
Oh,
Kentucky, right? So it's like I have deciphered her language and I know what she's saying, even though it may sound like total gibberish to somebody else. And
yeah,
one of her nurses said to me, "That's soul speak. That's when you're so intimately connected with someone else that you understand what their soul is saying to you."
yeah.
But that takes time, effort, and energy.
Mhm.
Do we offer that time, effort, and energy within our family dynamics? And this is another phrase that, like, my kids, they're like, we have these key phrases that have gone through our family, our little family mantras. Where your time, effort, and energy goes, that's where your heart will go.
Mhm.
So when you put your time, effort, and energy into being relational with the people in your house, well, your love for them is just gonna it's just gonna overflow.
Yeah. I love the way you say that because you said when you put it into being relationable,
Mhm.
not, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about how, and this is not to like bag Pinterest or Instagram. Lord knows I love social media and I think there's a beautiful, wonderful place for it and amazing things that can help and benefit people. But as you were talking about like the ways we be intentional, it's like so often I know I even fall into the trap of like, oh, well, what should I do for my kids? Well, let's look at, the pretty things, and that's what I'm drawn to, and that's
Right?
what captures my attention initially is because, oh, that looks so cute. And that's not to say any of those ideas are bad because I was just looking at it and at that lens. But what if we look at it in the lens of like what you're talking about of I don't want my kid's life to be cute. I want my
Ah,
kid's
that's good.
life to be fulfilling and full of
Yep.
love and full of relation, like, I want them to have a relationship with me. So
Mhm.
I love that you use that words of, like, am I willing to be relationable? Because I think that that word just changes what our intentional thoughts and
Right.
our research and, searching
We
for the
just a
will
lot of times we
do.
think that relationships should just come naturally, right? That it
Yeah,
should come easy.
yeah. There
And
are
if it
key
doesn't come easy, then it must be broken or there's something wrong with it, or maybe I don't even need it. But that's inaccurate because I mean, there's a reason why there's that old saying that anything worth having, is worth working for,
Yeah,
right? Well, my family is worth working for. My relationship with my spouse is worth working for. My relationship with my kids is worth working for.
yeah,
And sometimes it doesn't come easy, but that's okay.
yeah.
That's okay.
Well, yeah, and because I've heard that quote, I've said that quote, like, "It takes work,"
Mhm.
but I like that you say, like, it's not supposed to. Like,
I think we just have a real misconception when
yeah,
it comes to relationships and maybe even parenting,
yeah,
right? That we're like, oh, parenting should be a piece of cake.
yeah.
Seriously? Like sometimes my cakes come out really bad and they fall, right? I mean, that's just, and sometimes I don't watch the timer and they burn. I mean, so not
Yeah,
every
that's
cake is
a good one.
perfect, but that doesn't mean I quit baking,
Yeah, that's a really good
right?
yeah,
So I'm not gonna quit.
yeah, and I think I'm laughing so hard because like, that's kinda where if I'm honest, like, that's where I've been with parenting. Because like I said, I grew up in a huge family. I always wanted a huge family, but I also, like, I babysat all the time, and babysitting was so easy for me. Like, it just was, and I was like, "Oh, I am made to be a mother," is
Ah,
what I like,
sorry,
I
I'm laughing
always
because
thought.
it's a different ball game, right?
Yeah, and now I'm like, "I don't wanna be in this house with these children." I texted my sister today multiple times. Like, I would really appreciate if I could have a hearing aid and turn down the volume.
But and I really I hope that's not, like,
No,
disrespectful
it's
to
not. It's
any well,
not
just
because you're
anybody, like,
human.
hard of hearing. I don't I'm not trying to be
Right. Oh yeah, I
appreciative of
understand.
the blessing of hearing my children, but that is, like that is a mantra that is actually written on my mirror of that sound is the future and that is a beautiful noise, like, I
Kind of like when we hear the jets and we hear the artillery and we're like, oh,
Mhm.
there's the sound of freedom,
Yeah,
even though it's waking me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, making my baby cry, right? We're like, oh, it's the sound of freedom, right?
yeah,
That's the sound of the future. But we
yeah,
don't always remember that.
yeah, but I
And I think the other thing too is we forget that just as we have moments, so do our kids,
yeah, yeah, they do.
right?
And they're supposed to, like, that's why they're here. They're here in this life to learn and grow and experience, but yet, like, my natural instinct or reaction is, "This should be easy. I thought I was made for this." The relationship why does the relationship require so much? Why don't I just know? Like, that's our gut reaction. But
So
maybe it's
two
like
things.
you said, like, it's because it takes that emotional, mental digging down that we just don't feel like we have, but it takes that grit almost to
So two things that I would say is I think parents put a lot of pressure on themselves to
uh
think that they have to make their kids' world perfect.
yeah,
That's not realistic. Our world is not perfect, and life is not going to be perfect. So, why in the world do we want to try and make everything perfect for our kids?
mhm,
That's setting us up for an unrealistic standard, and that's setting them up for an unrealistic view.
yeah, yeah,
You've got to deal with the good and the bad, the highs and the lows. One of the things that we always told our kids is, I love you very much, but I don't want you to be happy every day. I want you to have joy no matter your circumstance,
yeah,
because your joy shouldn't be based in your circumstance or your situational
yeah,
environment,
yeah,
because that could change. I'm happy when it's sunny and I don't favor cold weather, but I'm still going to be joyful in the moment. I'm still going to find the good in the moment, right? Do you
yeah,
see what
yeah,
I'm saying on the difference between happy and joyful?
yeah,
I'm glad that you're happy that you love living where we're currently living because you've made friends, but we will find joy when we move. It
mhm,
just may take a while,
yeah,
but it will come back.
yeah,
So let that be your underline. And they would get so mad at me. Mom, mom, I love you. I love you. But guess what? You're not going to be happy every day at your job. But you
yeah,
better have some kind of underlying sense of stability that allows you to find joy no matter what.
yeah. I
That's a
love how
choice.
many times you've said, like, they probably thought I was over communicating and, like, you mentioned the whining because I love it because it's like good parenting is not always going to be like this magical moment with your kids. And like
Ah,
we
right. No.
experience that we have, our oldest is just about to turn 8. So it's like I'm super grateful that you're reminding me of that because that's what I want. Like I want it to be this, yes, it's touching their heart, but I love that like it's just encouraging because it reminds me I still need to, and it doesn't mean that it's not working just because they're rolling their eyes. Like,
So sorry. Kentucky was a farming community, right?
yeah, yeah, that's where we
So
are.
I have a lot of farming metaphors. And one of the things I tell the kids is your harvest doesn't come up overnight. Like
Mhm,
sometimes you tend the field, you prep it, you plant the seed, then you take care of it afterwards. You're weeding it, you're feeding it, you're watering it, right? And it
mhm,
takes a while for that harvest to come up, but that doesn't mean it's not coming.
yeah,
You just haven't seen it yet. Well, the same thing applies sometimes in the lessons that we're teaching our kids. We may not see them take root immediately, but that doesn't mean that that lesson isn't being grounded in them. And
yeah,
that doesn't mean that they're not learning from that experience, even if we don't see the positive out of it yet. It's coming. You just keep tending. You just keep watering. You just keep, working that soil, and you just keep planting good stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
eventually it comes out.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit. You
Sure.
mentioned that our standard shouldn't be trying to create a perfect life for our kids, which I 100% agree with you. But I'm curious, do you kind of, what was your standard, for your military kids
Mhm.
of the kind of life you were trying to help them live?
So we would always say to the kids, before they walked out the door, remember who you are.
Mhm.
You're elite. That's your last name. What does that mean? That means you tell the truth. Your word is your word. You're going to conduct yourself correctly, and you're going to be kind, right? Like that was just an underlying standard of
Mhm.
you're going to honor that family name because that means something. So remember who you are. Remember where you come from,
Mhm.
that we have humble beginnings, that your dad worked hard, that I have worked hard to get, to wherever we are at. And hard work is a value, and it's a privilege. Um, and then for us, because we have a strong faith, we would say, and remember to whom you belong,
Yeah.
meaning that you belong to the Lord. So, like, that was just a constant. And that was our reminder before we would send them out. Before our son went into the Marine Corps, we were like, remember who you are, remember where you come from, and remember to whom you belong.
Mhm.
Now, adhere to that, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think every family, once you kind of figure out, not like a mission statement, but maybe it is kind of like a mission
Yeah.
statement,
No, it is.
right? I mean, we create mission statements for everything else in the world. Why wouldn't we be intentional about having a mission statement for our family? We're raising little people here in a very crazy environment. So it's kind of good to know what target you're aiming for
Yeah.
so that you can actually shoot for it. Otherwise, you're shooting wild, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Which
our,
maybe, yeah, is, I mean, not the problem, but just if we ever feel like, or I guess just speaking from my experience, like whenever I feel like things are so chaotic when it comes to my parenting, it's come down to I don't know what I'm shooting for in whatever facet of parenting we're in. And
Sure.
and once we get that honed in, then there's a lot of steps and levels to finding that peace and that groundness. But just knowing what we're shooting for changes
So,
every.
parenting is not a passive job, you
Yeah.
know? Like, you don't just hit cruise control and coast. And I remember people saying, "Oh, you must be so excited, like, your kids are out of the house. You don't,
Mhm.
you're off duty now." Are you kidding me? I'm not. You're never off duty.
Yeah.
My oldest just turned 30, and guess what? I'm still not off duty because she's raising 3 daughters.
Yeah.
And now I have grandma duty, but I'm also
Mom too.
trying to help her help them. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's not like it's not a job that's ever done,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
Yeah. I'm
And
grateful for that because I'm
right,
the 29-year-old who's raising 4.5 kids who just needs her mom sometimes. Like,
right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to remember that it's not a passive thing. And if you hit cruise control, then guess what? Your kids know it. And we all do it. We all have those moments where we're just like tapped out at the end of a, year-long deployment. Guess what? You're tapped out.
Yeah.
I mean, you are. You're just kind of fried. So you do kind of hit cruise control. Okay, but don't stay there.
Mhm.
Don't stay there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We can have the Yeah, you can have those cruise control moments, but that's just, well, because I love going down like metaphor lane for some reason. Because like, yeah, you think about a road trip, like you don't stay cruise control for a while. At least the road trips I've been, it's like, okay, we're on cruise control for a little bit because we can be, and oh look, now it's not safe, so let's get out of
right.
cruise. Yeah,
Let's get back active. Let's re-engage.
yeah.
Something that I was taught, and it was actually in the Camp Lejeune MOPS program, the
Mhm.
Mothers of Preschoolers program.
Yeah.
We had a speaker come in and they said that in life, you're instructing your kids, but you should have 5 people who you have more or less vetted who are also pouring into your kids.
Yeah.
And then you, like me as a person, I should be pouring into 5 other kids
Mhm.
because we need that. They need that. They need to have those lessons and those values and those goals reinforced by solid people outside of ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think for us in the military life, that can be tough because we do transition so much. And if you don't have an extended family that
Mhm.
can do that, or you're not close with them, like I was an only child,
Okay.
so um, I don't have this huge family that could necessarily pour into my kids, but we have made some phenomenal friends along the way who
Mhm.
have become family
Yeah.
almost and have poured into my kids in really valuable, important ways.
Yeah.
It's important to keep that in mind, to kind of look for that and to facilitate those relationships,
Uh-huh.
but to also be that to someone else
Yeah. Yeah.
because we need that support,
Yeah. It takes a village. It really does.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it does.
it really does. I've really liked this conversation.
I love talking about family. I do.
This is
I
awesome.
do.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Last question, and I know you've answered it before, but we'll see if it's the same or not.
Oh
What
boy.
is your key to thriving that you want to share with your fellow Wave warriors?
So I knew that this was going to be the question, and so this is the English teacher in me.
Uh,
Um, I looked it up in the dictionary. I wanted to know
Ooh.
how thrive was defined. So this is what Merriam-Webster says: thrive, as defined by Merriam-Webster, means to grow vigorously, to progress towards a goal despite or because of circumstances. Now,
There's a
tell
reason why
me,
I use the word. There's a reason.
right?
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome
looked it up.
because how perfect is that when you describe military life and thriving within military life, in particular, how military families can progress towards goals of unity, towards goals of success, towards goals of strength um, within our very unique environment,
Yeah.
right? That was perfect. We have the most unpredictable circumstances, and yet if we're willing to learn and we're open to developing new skills or learning new skills along the way. And I mean, depending on where you're located, like your base may have a ton of resources available to your family to learn about personalities, to learn about communication, to learn how to engage, to go on marriage retreats or family retreats.
Yeah.
We just have to be willing to step into those and make it a priority and utilize those things. But if we continue to learn, my goodness, how can we almost you can't help but thrive.
Yeah.
Not every day. You're
Mhm.
not going to feel like you're thriving every day, right?
Yeah.
But it's a long game,
Yeah.
right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So okay, so I may be walking for a leg of the marathon, but as long as I complete it, I win, right?
Well, and that's why I love the definition because it's not the definition itself of thriving does not dismiss the struggle.
Right. It says in spite of or because of.
Yeah, the struggle
I
is
love
there.
that.
And I particularly love the because of because that reminds me that I'm supposed to feel the quote unquote negative feelings. I'm supposed to feel them. And it
Right.
sucks. Like it sorry, I'm like on week 1 of husband being gone and it's,
It's okay.
like we were just this was gonna happen. But like it's um like I'm supposed to cry. I'm supposed to miss him. I'm supposed to be really tired because being a single mom or solo mom, I don't like Austin doesn't like it when I say single mom. But being a solo mom takes so much energy and there's so much beauty in that and I learned so much, but it also makes me so tired and it makes
Mhm.
me hurt so in so many ways. And like there is pain and there is tears, but through those things I've grown so much. Like
Mhm.
me now, or me 9 years ago, looking at me now, like they're totally different people. At the
Yep.
core it's the same, but the things I have learned because of the pains and the struggles, to be honest, mostly brought on by military life. But because of those, I'm such a better person and I know so much more, and I have learned and grown so much more, but also my heart is so much bigger because of those
Right.
things.
So my adult kids, when we've had these conversations where, you know, we've asked, if you had to do it over again, would you, do you wish that we had done things differently? And to the letter, they say no.
Yeah.
Because even though there were those moments that were hard and they had to leave friends behind or leave a school when they had finally made captain of the team, and yes, all those things happened, or move their senior year, all those things happened. They wouldn't change it because they feel like it made them stronger. It made them, they have a phenomenal bounce back factor,
Mhm.
but that was learned. Like we think bounce back should be instinctive, right? Everybody should just have it. Get real. All muscles have to be exercised.
Yeah.
So your bounce back factor muscle has to be exercised. And sometimes it's never been used before. So when you do use it, it really hurts and it's sore. I mean, that's just the honest truth. Um, yeah, they wouldn't trade it. And at the end of the day, I can say this now because, we did retire.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it.
Mhm.
I wouldn't.
I
So
love it. That's like the perfect way to end the episode. That's
good.
the perfect ending. Um, yeah, thank you so much. I honestly
Oh,
have
absolutely.
loved this conversation so much, and I know this will become a favorite episode. Be down and waiting
I
where.
hope so because I'm telling you, parenting is hard,
Yeah,
but it's hard for everybody.
yeah,
So it doesn't mean that we're failing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just means we get a, like you said, it just means we get to be open to learning and growing, and that,
right.
yeah, that's when we can thrive.
Yep.
Thank you
Oh,
so.
thank you. I've had so much fun.
If somebody wants to connect with you or contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can do it a couple of different ways. They can email me at contact@jolynnlee.com, or they can Google search me. I have a website, and they can contact me through that. Either way. Yeah.
Okay, and
So
real fast. Sorry, I'm sorry I scared you.
it's okay. It's okay.
um, because I just realized I know you wrote a book, and there's this whole section in the book about like military families. Will you tell everybody about the book and title and where they can find that
Okay,
information?
so I didn't write it alone. It was a group of military spouses that came together, so it's kind of just a compilation of all our stories. But there, oh look, there's the camera. Brave Women's Strong Faith: Inspiring Stories by Military Women and Wives.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
just talks about, it's just a whole bunch of stories covering a lot of dynamics within the military experience.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's kind of like chicken soup for the soul, but like military wives talking about our stuff for
yeah,
you.
yeah. I love
Yeah,
it. That's a great resource.
yeah,
Again, thank you so much, Waiting
yeah.
Warriors. Remember, just because it is hard doesn't mean it has to be miserable. Have a week,
That's right.
or let's try that one more time. Have a week.
Right. We all have a week. We want you to have a good one.
Have a good week, guys. We're just gonna leave it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
If you are loving this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review. Reviews help other waiting warriors out there find this amazing community and resource. It will go a long way and only takes like 5 seconds. Thanks so much.